Welcome to the Dynasty Roundtable Podcast YouTube show. Today we have a difficult topic. It's bound to make some people angry. It always does, these types of takes, but you can't love everybody, okay? As much as we want to be the John Grudens of Dynasty, we can't. We can't just love every prospect. You can't just go, "Hey man, I tell you what.
I'll tell you what, man.
I tell you what, man. This guy right here. Yeah.
Really
This Tyson Bagent, man, he'd be a starting quarterback if I was still running an NFL team. I tell you what,
it got me into Migos.
Yeah, oh yeah. The Louisville Cardinals sent me this big old box of stuff. Yeah, it's cool. I work for Barstool now. I don't have to do shit anyway. So Dynasty sells. If you haven't figured it out, Dynasty sells. We each came up with 6, so we're going to do 12 if I'm counting correctly, which is always, you never know, man, as my dogs are going just ballistic upstairs. I think my wife just walked in the door. But how are you feeling tonight, Matt? And by the way, when you're done telling us how you're doing, because that's important to establish, I have something to complain about. But how are you?
I'm doing great. You know what, though? I feel like there hasn't been enough drama in my life yet right now.
Really?
Wow. We're in a lull in fantasy, and my fiance and I just finished The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives season 2.
Oh,
phenomenal show. It's beyond reality TV. How the drama that these girls create. But anyway, I'm just maybe not enough gossip, not enough complaining, not enough tea in my life right now. So I'm going to kick it right back to you. You teased it backstage. I want to hear what this is about.
All right. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. I'm going to try not to F up the, cause let me just make sure. All right. Let me see if I can, screw it. We don't have time for this.
We got 12 cells to get through. So
we're just gonna, I'm going to take this overlay off. I'm going to put us down here. I'm going to share the screen. This is just, the podcast audience has already left. They have already left because here, I cannot believe in this day and age on May 22nd, we have to suffer through, oh my God, can you believe what Justin Fields is doing in practice? He's going to be the best fucking quarterback in the NFL. Like, look at that slow-mo footage. Look at the flick of the wrist. Look at the footwork. It all looks the same to me, but since he's doing it on a high-definition camera on May 21st or 22nd or whatever it is, since we're 3.5 months away from kickoff, Justin Fields is the best goddamn quarterback in the NFL, and if you don't draft him based on this red shirt practice stupid bullshit that we're watching, then you're an idiot. You're a goddamn idiot.
It's the worst point of the NFL season here. We're just so desperate for content that we were talking about the ramification. People were legitimately creating discourse.
Oh, this was the one. Sorry, I didn't mean to pick on Nick. Sorry.
Well, I was actually just about to make that comment of like, at least Nick can paint that as like just sharing a really good throw that Justin Fields made in practice, right? Yeah. But the fact of the matter is people are taking that and they are going to use it and, bump Justin Fields up in their rankings or load up an underdog draft and take a couple shares of Justin Fields because they're seeing these things. And it's really asinine that we're at a point in the NFL season where people were legitimately creating discourse around the potential ramifications of the tush push being banned, by the way, of which there should have been none. I truly got like disappointed when I saw people saying like Jalen Hurts had 11 rushing touchdowns from the tush push. Like, yeah, sure. Their dual threat quarterback that's built like a brick shit house can squat 600 pounds. Yeah, no, they're just going to stop figuring out ways to utilize his legs around the goal line. Get over yourself. But it's just all asinine. Like I consume so much less football social media content. at this point in the year. I've gotten what I wanted. I wanted the rookies, right? I wanted the rookies. I wanted the free agents. I wanted the trades. I wanted to figure out the rosters. Now, as a fantasy manager, your goal is to not care about anything that happens from now until August, unless it's a major injury. Because back in the day, Seth, do you remember just a few years ago when Josh Jacobs took the first carry for the Las Vegas Raiders in a preseason game? And people legitimately were like, is Josh Jacobs going to get traded? The new Josh McDaniels doesn't like Josh Jacobs. As a committee headed in Las Vegas, he was like the RB1 in fantasy points per game. And he had one of the most monstrous playoff runs I've ever seen in my life. So we are talking about dynasty sells today. I promise none of it has anything to do with videos in shorts. And for that, you are welcome.
Yeah, sorry, we showed a tweet from Nick Pentikoff. And I'm not trying to pick on Nick. I was really trying to find Dov Kleiman. Dov, is that his real name? You think Dov Kleiman? Maybe his name's
Dov. It's not
Dov.
even really a real person. Like the rumor is the real Dov like sold his account a long time ago. I don't know.
That was the first.
I'll say he's not worth figuring out how to pronounce it.
Yeah. So the tweet and this, trust me. As a Bears fan, if you want me to dispel this myth for you, like this magic trick that Dov Kleiman, whoever the hell he is trying to put it, it's just content at this stage. Like, I watched Justin Fields for 3 years, and I get it. I understand he did not get the best shake in Chicago. You can't deny that. But what I will say is that Justin Fields is on his third NFL team. And he still can't throw with anticipation. So he's great for fantasy. He's like, honestly, if you're drafting Justin Fields right now, you're probably a little bit late to the party. I'm not super in the best ball streets, so I don't know what his ADP is. I'm assuming it's going up. But like, Justin Fields is not a good NFL quarterback. And it would shock me if he gets a second contract with the Jets. Like, they're not paying him $30-40 million a year. Isn't his contract like 2 years, $22 million or something like that? Like,
it is,
give me a break.
2 years, 40 million total. He's got a $5 million base salary this year, and then 20 million next year if that contract data is correct. QB 13, 9th round pick in fantasy. He's QB 25 on Keep Trade Cut for Dynasty, which is where I was like, he might actually be a value.
Yeah. Well, here's
just because he's going to be starting, but at seasonal, QB 13 is ridiculous.
Well, here's the deal. Like, if you could tell me, like, guaranteed, which I guess it looks pretty good right now because I don't think the Jets have anybody else on their roster. Like, if you could tell me that Justin Fields is going to play 16, 17 games, yeah, that's not a bad quarterback to have in fantasy football. You know, the problem is I saw him get hurt way too many times, taking unnecessary sacks in Chicago. Like, Justin Fields is still one of the quarterbacks that holds the ball longest in the NFL, last time I checked. And there's a reason the Steelers went to Russell Wilson instead of him. I know it's not popular. Justin Fields was not the subject of this, by the way. He is, but it's a larger point here that we need to stop doing this slow motion, oh my God, look at this throw in shorts in May. And look at, like, I think somebody was charting Caleb Williams in practice yesterday or something and said he had a bad day at practice. We're going to talk about Caleb Williams a little bit later, but to your point, for none of those reasons am I selling players right now. We have real legitimate reasons to sell players, but these practices are not any of those reasons.
Yeah, last thing before we go to sells, back up in New York, by the way, is Tyrod Taylor. So there's definitely a chance that he.
Okay, that's a real backup there.
Way less rushing ability at this point, but maybe a Justin Fields that actually proved that he could pass in the NFL back in his day, because he was a dual threat guy, in his prime. I don't know if he's at that point. But anyway, just speaking to the risk there.
Gotcha. So let's kick this off with a bang, okay? Let's make the people mad right off the bat, and let us know. Comment below. Tell us how dumb we are, how smart we are, however you feel. We'll take all the comments. Saquon Barkley, okay, is my number one sell, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say because we have not we never talk about these beforehand. We just throw our list together, and then I open it up. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I want to hear what Matt has to say on that, which is why these conversations are so great. So he had a career year last season. I understand, and he definitely could be one of those running backs that transcends everything that I'm about to say because he's Saquon freaking Barkley. But at the same time, I feel like we were saying these things about CMC last season, and we all know how last season played out for CMC. So here's the deal. Over the last 3 seasons, Saquon's had a ton of work. Like he's rushed the ball 887 times, and he rushed the ball 345 times last year, and he touched the ball 378 times last year. That is a huge workload. We want to see it in fantasy, but we want to see this balance so that they stay healthy as well. So here's a brief history lesson for you, for everybody watching, on the RB1 and fantasy points per game over the last 5 seasons and how they finished the next season. So obviously in 2023, we had Christian McCaffrey. He touched the ball 339 times, averaged 24.5 fantasy points per game, and then the next season, we all know how that played out. 12 fantasy points per game. He played in 4 games. What about 2022? Austin Eckler touched the ball 311 times, 21.9 fantasy points per game. What happened the next season? 2023, 13.2 fantasy points per game, played in 14 games. His efficiency tanked. What about 2021? Jonathan Taylor touched the ball 372 times, 21.9 fantasy points per game. The next season, 2022, 13.3 fantasy points per game, played in 11 games. What about 2020? Alvin Kamara touched the ball 270 times. Now he only played in 15 games, so he would have touched the ball more than 300 times. 25.2 fantasy points per game for Alvin Kamara in 2020. Insane. The next season, not as bad. 18.1 fantasy points per game. Still a downtick. He was actually the RB4 in fantasy points per game that year. Only played in 13 games, though. 2019, and this is how much of a stud Christian McCaffrey is. Christian McCaffrey touched the ball 403 times in 2019, averaged 29.5 fantasy points per game in 2019. In 2020, he averaged 30.1 fantasy points per game, but played in just 3 games. So history would tell us that no matter how good the situation might appear for the quote-unquote RB1, and Saquon in redraft is getting drafted like the RB1 overall, last time I checked. Maybe he's RB2 or RB3, I don't know, but he's RB4, player 22, according to Keep Trade Cut. No matter how good you are, that amount of workload on anybody is tough. It's going to be tough for him to finish as a top 5 RB this year, and I'm not willing to buck that trend with Saquon. He could do it, okay? He could just completely throw everything that I just told you in my face. But history would tell us that Saquon is probably not going to be a top 5 running back this year. What say you, Matt Babich?
So all of these conversations, can always be broken down into nuance of, what's your, are you a win now team or are you a rebuild? But from a neutral perspective, I do agree with you where, he's at a point in his age where, but then again, I have gone down the age route before and said he can't keep doing this. And that was about Derrick Henry. And if there is anybody who can defy that he can't keep getting away with this, he's another year older. If anyone can defy or at least hold off Father Time for a few more years, it's definitely Saquon Barkley. And the system that he's in is never going to change. It's going to continue to be very centric around that run game and making things easier for Jalen Hurts in the passing game. And it all depends on how you maneuver the trade as a team member. So I am all in on selling Saquon Barkley if you get the right package, because when you look down the line of running backs, I mean, hell, like even if you did a swap for Derrick Henry, if you're a win now team, you can move off of Barkley, get Henry and something on top. If you're really, I mean, there are teams that have just a plethora of running backs, and maybe you were lucky enough to draft Travion Henderson in your draft, and you trade Saquon for Rashee Rice plus something on top. Or you're a QB needy team and you move Saquon Barkley for a quarterback that really helps even out your roster a little bit, especially with a premium position like that. So there are many avenues to getting that done, and I think from a historical standpoint, like you laid out, you should be leaning more towards sell on Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and I love there's just so many options, so many players that I could tier down to.
Right.
And I get it. It's risky, and it's all about your risk tolerance. And if you're a win now team and you have Saquon, you might just say, no, I want Saquon. But I would say that in and of itself is risky. Like, you could tier down to Bucky Irving. You could tier down to Jonathan Taylor. You pick your guy.
There's a lot of options, especially at running back.
Like, I really like the Derrick Henry call out. I think you could potentially get a first round pick on top of Derrick Henry. That might take some doing. I don't know, but I think it's possible. So I'm just saying, like, RB4, player 22 overall, I'm at least putting him on the trade block because that kind of workload, he's 28 years old now. I get it. It's Saquon, and he's in a great situation. And it's probably not going to change this year because they won the freaking Super Bowl. But that amount of workload, it would not surprise me if he gets dinged up at least once, if not multiple times throughout the year. And then it's like, okay, they could play this game. We'll just save him for the playoffs. Then we'll try to keep him healthy for the playoffs. And there's a million discount running backs that they could insert into that scenario that could help Saquon get to the playoffs. Is all I'm trying to say.
I think for me, it's more about what you can do in the aggregate by moving off of his value and positioning yourself better in years 2 and 3. Rather than I really, to be honest, even when it's backed up with stats like you gave, I don't want to predict injuries. Like, I don't think it's feasible to be the one who predicts like a 13 game season out of Saquon Barkley. But I do agree with where his value is at. You can take advantage of that and move off of him and still benefit as a team.
Yeah, let us know what you think. That's a pretty polarizing one right off the jump. So I'll throw it to you, Matt. Who is your first sell?
All right, so I'm going to kick it off with somebody who, I used to be incredibly bullish on, and that's James Cook. So running back 13, right about player 61 on Keep Trade Cut right now. So my overarching philosophy is to try and sell most running backs when you're not in your near-term window. So there's always the tier down aspect, and you'll understand why that aspect is there for James Cook when I give the stats. But in terms of a rebuilding team, like, yes, he's young, but we have to look a little bit past that. And, is James Cook going to be the guy, doing what he was doing last year, scoring 18 touchdowns in 3 years when you're ready to compete, 2 to 3 years? No, he's probably not. So if your question is, am I 2 to 3 years out? You're probably all the way up to like Breece Hall. Like, that's probably the line where you can consider holding. Like, I'm probably moving Breece. You can convince me, to hold on to him. But let's get back to James Cook. I was more in on James Cook than nearly any big time analyst coming into the NFL. I was the one saying, why are we worried about 200 pounds? That does not mean he can't, go into the end zone. And I have the receipts, but now I'm flipping the script. When he's RB13, we've jumped the shark, and here's why. I love the fact that he managed an 18 touchdown season because it is exactly what big time analysts said he couldn't do because of his size, said he could never be done, have a 10 touchdown season under 200 pounds. And B, touchdowns are so memorable in terms of fantasy scoring that you remember the LeGarrette Blount, 12 touchdown season or whatever. You remember the guy that just keeps getting into the end zone. And many people then don't even care about the peripherals, which were very concerning. 49% snap share, number 35. 59% opportunity share, number 25. Number 24 in total weighted opportunities, but given he was active for 16 games, his per rank is a little bit worse. 52 red zone touches, number 14. So there's an obvious discrepancy between usage and touchdown scoring. He was 14th among running backs in red zone touches, but first by a large margin in touchdowns. Something seems fishy. 27% route participation, RB 36 in that category. All of this in consideration, Seth, he was RB 26 in expected fantasy points per game. We have a huge premium now for someone who was, 5 or 6 goal line carries away, a few Josh Allen QB sneaks, a couple of play action passes away from having a massively different value. And it was also due to some very big games that he had down the stretch of the fantasy season. Again, another bias. He scores a lot of touchdowns. He was playing big towards the end of the season, but people seem to forget that he was losing work to Ray Davis. And oh my gosh.
Ty Johnson.
I mean, there's so much writing on the wall. And if you're going to put your faith in a top 15 running back for somebody who's not even getting on the field for at least 50% of snaps, that is not the profile we chase in fantasy. That is a touchdown scoring profile, and the odds could easily flip his way or flip the other way next year. And so I am not betting on that profile. Like we said with the running backs we listed, there are plenty of values down the way that I would prefer. And if I'm a rebuilding team, I would move off him completely. I would just ship him for a pick if I had to.
Yeah, I'm in the fortunate position. I just made a trade, and this was not to get James Cook, although James Cook was in the trade. I got CeeDee Lamb in the trade, was like the main part of it. And my initial thought was, and because I think James Cook can be a trap, because on the surface you look at the situation and you go, man, starting running back in a good situation with the Bills, but everything you laid out is correct. And 18 touchdowns is not repeatable when you're 14th in red zone touches. And also, this is startling to me, and this is for any running back that doesn't do this, I'm automatically pretty much not interested. If you don't catch passes because Josh Allen doesn't check the ball down really, then your upside is capped. Your upside is dependent on those touchdowns because you're not getting on the field, really. I mean, what did he have? What did you say? 50% snap, 49.2% snap share. Not getting on the field, not getting targeted, 19th in carries. So really, the RB8 finish was fueled by those touchdowns. And before last year, granted, he'd only played in 2 NFL seasons before last year. His highest touchdown number was 6 touchdowns. So I agree with you. This is weird. Also, you have the weird contract situation. That's bizarre, where he wants $15 million a year, which no. We love you, James Cook, but you're not that important to our team. And I think the big buy, and I know this is a sell show, don't you think, and I don't have Ray Davis's page pulled up, but don't you think Ray Davis is like one of the biggest buys in Dynasty right now, under the radar?
I mean, I certainly, we talk about situations that you want to monitor and not necessarily, trying to having a super firm take on which player. But the Bills' backfield is definitely someone who I'm interested in, and like looking at Davis was okay, as a rusher. He did get some red zone opportunities, which was really nice. He was better as a pass catcher. And that's probably what's going to shine the most through. If he can get a little better at pass blocking and make that, one of his fortes, really the passing game side of things. And he has the bigger body for the ability to handle, goal line carries. So yeah, why not? I mean, somebody in that backfield, and Ray Davis is probably, the most coveted guy to go track down. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that call. I'll throw out my second guy. And I don't know, I didn't mean it for it to be this way, but I just picking on all the Eagles. AJ Brown, another spicy name. AJ Brown, here's what I'll say about him. He's a stud. I understand, but we have to be able to balance winning now versus cashing out at the right time to try to keep a sustained winner going. So I acknowledge, again, this one could blow up in my face, but I think I've got some good data on my side. Number one, he's getting up there in age. He's past the age apex as he's turning 28 years old this year. The Eagles passed the ball the least amount of any team in the NFL last season, 25.7 pass attempts per game, and I don't see that changing much at all. Like we talked about in the Saquon Barkley section, they won the Super Bowl last year. They're not going to change their formula if it worked. He also dealt with a knee injury last year, missed 4 games. He finishes the wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game, but his expected fantasy points per game ranked number 20 amongst wide receivers. And I came across when I was looking at his stats something that really didn't make sense. And I need to do a deeper dive into this to see if it's more of a trend than I think it is. But Brown ranked number 24 in air yards amongst wide receivers with 1,168. And he had 1,079 actual receiving yards. So that's like not even 100 less air yards to receiving yards, which ranked number 14 amongst wide receivers. That doesn't seem sustainable. And when you look at his past performance, like that doesn't match up. Typically, there's more air yards separating the actual receiving yards. And I will say that there should be an insane target share for him again this year because the target competition isn't crazy, especially once you get deeper down the list. Like it's Devonta Smith, Jahan Dotson, Saquon out of the backfield, Dallas Goedert, and AJ Brown's a beast. And this one could blow up in my face, but I am willing to bet that a team that doesn't pass the ball much, lowest in the NFL, and a player that outperformed expectations given his volume last season, who dealt with an injury, knee injury on top of everything else, is likely not going to live up to the expectations in 2025. And just like with Saquon, I mean, player 30, what is it? What did I say? 36 overall now, 34 when I looked at it. So player 36, wide receiver 14 or 15. Gosh, Travis Hunter leapfrogged him since I've last looked at this list. But you could easily tier down to an option that I would prefer and gain a pick on top of it. And I'm absolutely, and in my opinion, you're not going to miss out on as much production as you might think. So your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious case is like tearing down a short way to like Rashee Rice, somebody who could be just as productive this year, and then you can just get a little something on top, and then be, attached to Patrick Mahomes, at age 24 or whatever, rather than age 28. In this offense, he's got to learn a new playbook again. So I totally see the angle there. I also see when now teams wanting to trade for AJ Brown. I think it's all about risk, and if you're taking on that asset, you got to figure out, you better not be loaded up with too many veterans because you're going to have a really hard time maintaining that roster for a few years. But if you're, a relatively younger competitive team, I have a dynasty best ball team where I'm in that position. I have a lot of youth, but I'm very talented. And I thought about taking a splash on AJ Brown because I can waste a pick and get that for a year or two. And especially in best ball with the boom weeks. But I am again leaning towards sell here.
All right. Double agreement kind of from Matt Babich. All right. I'll throw it to you with your next sell.
All right. You got to love Lions coaches and social media teams coming out here again and peddling the same shit every year. A big social media clip of oftentimes he's not even on the doing anything on the field. He's just like walking around like all happy and stuff. It's like big year loading for JMO. Yep. All right. Sweet. 4th year we're saying that. This time it's definitely true. Except, I'm not sold, obviously. He has cleared 75 receiving yards, Seth, in 7 of his 33 career games, all last year. The only time he's cleared 15 fantasy points is when he has found the end zone. His peripheral metrics are not good at all. 19% target share, number 51 amongst wide receivers, was a career high. 20% target rate, targets per route run, number 68 among receivers, was a career high, not counting his 9-target rookie season. 86% route participation, number 39, was a career high. 31% air yard share, number 24, was a career high. So finally, we're good at something, and that's drawing targets downfield. 2.18 yards per route run, number 26, was a career high. Again, yes, finally. We finally have a metric that doesn't stink for Jameson Williams. This all led to him being the wide receiver 40 in expected fantasy points per game. Massively outkicked that projection because of his spike weeks and finished at wide receiver 22. Again, it's look at what he was given. And similarly to James Cook, ask yourself, can this actually be repeated? The answer to that is no for Jameson Williams. But the anti-argument is going to be year 4. He had the suspension and the injury. It's really only his second year. Stop. No, it's not. It's his 4th fucking year. Because if he was really that guy, he'd be out there balling. But he's not. He's a gadget deep threat. That's what he is. That's always what he's going to be. And don't let his coaches, who obviously are going to want to talk nice about him, change your mind about that. I'm trusting Jameson Williams at this value to increase the year after your play calling guru leaves. I'm not buying a minute of it.
Yeah, he's way too high here as I'm looking at this list. I mean, you're telling me I could get George Pickens is lower according to Keep Trade Cut. DJ Moore is lower. Jalen Waddle is lower.
People have gone way too opposite on DJ Moore too. That's a conversation for a different day.
Brandon Ayuk is lower. I mean, I like Brandon Ayuk ahead of the potentially the 3rd pass and maybe even the 4th if you throw in Jahmyr Gibbs. I like that call quite a bit. That's very well done by you. Are you ready for some therapy? Seth's therapy corner here, because this one's tough for me. I'm not gonna lie. My name's Seth. I've been a Bears fan my whole life, and I think Caleb Williams is a sell in Dynasty. And you have to be honest with yourself and your process. And the first step to admitting you have a problem is to admit that there is one. And I think I had a bit of a Caleb Williams problem, admittedly. Sometimes I get a little worked up about the Bears players. I don't know if you've been able to tell over the past years. Just a little bit. Just a little touch of the hype, that maybe I buy it, because we just want our team to be so good and they suck so bad. But Caleb Williams, and this is a process play, because I've changed course on this. Obviously, I was the biggest Caleb Williams fan coming out, and I was taking Caleb Williams over Jaden Daniels. I was wrong. And to be very clear, this is a risk avoidance play. Usually I'm no risk it, no biscuit, but this is a risk avoidance play. But honestly, I don't know if there's much more upside for Caleb Williams. I mean, he's quarterback 10, player 21, according to Keep Trade Cut. And there just isn't much room for him to grow, to go up the ladder. And some of the other quarterbacks that are ranked around him, according to Keep Trade Cut, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert, at least they've had some good seasons. I mean, Justin Herbert, I think, had a quarterback 2 overall season. And Williams was not put in a great situation last year, admittedly, but he finished quarterback 16 overall, quarterback 21 in fantasy points per game. And I'll admit, if anybody should be excited about Caleb Williams this year, it should be me, because he has an embarrassment of riches. They added Luther Burden and Colston Loveland in the draft. They already had DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. They upgraded their offensive line, 3 new starters on the interior, And most importantly, they upgraded their coach. But here's the problem, Matt. Here's the problem. All of that should get you excited. But the problem is we don't know if Caleb Williams is actually good. We don't. And if anybody's telling you that they know that Caleb Williams is good, and trust me, then anything worth believing is worth questioning as well. As a Bears fan, I'm really pulling for this to work. I want it to work. And maybe I have Matt Nagy PTSD. Maybe I've seen this play before. The hotshot coach from the can't miss team coming in with the plays from Andy Reid saying, "Oh, I like big plays." You saw him when Ben Johnson said that. I got Matt Nagy flashbacks. It's like, I don't like the tush push. I like big plays. We don't run the I formation around here. All right. I'm gonna need to see this work before I buy into this Caleb Williams hype. And this is very simple. There are safer assets that you can have. And I don't think Caleb Williams, even if he hits this year, how far up the list is he going to go? He's not going to go ahead of Lamar. I don't think he's going to go ahead of Patrick Mahomes or CJ Stroud. I just don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I think his upside is like quarterback 6 or 8 at the best, at the tippy top. And he's quarterback 10 right now. And there's a good chance that the bottom falls out too. And I'm just going to throw up this. And this is what, I had already had my doubts, but I'm going to throw up this tweet if I can figure out the technology. It worked so well before. Oh, I messed it up. I should have had the overlay. Right. I should have taken it down. But shout out to Jacob Gibbs on Twitter, who's been posting some just incredible data. Quarterback, let me size this up. The podcast audience has left already. So Caleb Williams delivered a 38% catchable ball rate on throws of 20-plus air yards without pressure. That's a key in 2024. He was quarterbacked 32 out of 33 qualifiers, according to Fantasy Points data. That is horrendous. Again, that's without pressure. So that doesn't count throw the offensive line out. It was terrible last year. We understand. But this is a pretty naked stat. This is pretty revealing to me. So does Ben Johnson fix all of that? Maybe. Maybe. But there's also a chance that Ben Johnson is just Matt Nagy 2.0 because he's never been a head coach in the NFL before. So, I don't know. Let us know what you think in the comments. I want this to work. I want it to work. I'm begging for it to work. As a Bears fan, starve for a quarterback that can throw. I mean, there's a Pope from Chicago that Chicago hasn't had a 4,000-yard passer yet, for crying out loud. So Matt Babich, help me here.
So I'll speak to the defense of Caleb Williams here for a little bit. Now, with such a bad playbook and so many bad concepts, and maybe a little bit of the seeing ghosts. There was some talk about even film not being pushed down on him or ran in the right way. Throws of 20-plus air yards especially are the longer the throw, right? The more open the less variance that you can have in terms of your ball placement, your speed, your timing, everything. So that is not something from college, especially with an incompetent organization and bad play calling that's not setting you up for success. That is not something you can just take from college into the NFL and excel at it. That is something that very few people can do. And it's the minority examples that live in people's heads and create an internal bias that this is something that should be easy on day one. It's not. Now, we should see better numbers than this, obviously, but we could even, and I think quarterbacks get faulted a little too much for catchable ball stats because let's say you're throwing a fade. You're throwing a fade to me, but I get bumped off the line of scrimmage. That's a timing difference. And if you're not used to that, you're going to throw that ball like he didn't get bumped off his route, or you're going to second guess your throw while you're trying to figure out what to change about it. And it's going to lead to an incompletion. So there's so much nuance to an argument about catchable ball stats, because not only is it subjective a bit, what is catchable, it's also ambiguous as to why it was uncatchable. And it's automatically deemed, based on the way the stat is presented, the quarterback's fault. So that's my caveat on that. I do agree with you that based on his profile, you are playing for, the massive upside seasons of him, for him being QB 10, or you're planning for, Patrick Mahomesian, 10 years of fantasy dominance. I had a similar thought actually when I looked at Drake May's value, which is QB 7. We don't know really if he's good yet either. To be honest, I think I saw more flashes, particularly just as a rusher and what he was able to do without any designed rushes. That rushing floor is obviously the big difference between the two of them, but I can absolutely get on board with selling Caleb Williams, especially in the right situation. If you can flip a believer, like a rebuilding team that's dumb enough to let you even come close to trading Caleb Williams for Patrick Mahomes, I'd do that in a heartbeat, for an example.
Yeah. You'd probably have to add a little bit to it, but yeah.
Well, yeah, of course. I'm if I'm a Mahomes owner and I'm like smart, I'm still making that package. I'm making someone overpay for Mahomes. You know what I mean? And if you're lucky enough to get a reasonable offer between exchanging Caleb Williams and Mahomes, then I would take it in a heartbeat. That's what I'm trying to say.
Would you give Caleb Williams in a mid-first, future first for Patrick Mahomes?
Yes.
Me too. That's what I would do.
Heartbeat.
What about Caleb Williams and 2 firsts for Jalen Hurts?
I'm thinking about it, and it's really just because of the age curve with rushing quarterbacks. Obviously, they don't have as much longevity in that regard. And I get a little bit worried with both Jackson and Hurts. Not necessarily like startup worry or like trying to sell off of them, but more so in if I'm going to give up the farm and risk all of my flexibility for these assets, you better be damn sure. And so I think that's where I start getting really cautious. But if I feel like I'm a Hurts or Jackson away from being a championship contender for the next 2 to 4 years straight, yes, I'll do it.
Because I think that is maybe where you could make a move, because it's somebody who's trying to be clever, somebody who's trying to be clever, like, oh, I think Caleb Williams has, top 5 or 6 upside. I'm going to get that quarterback plus 2 firsts, and he's the number 1 overall pick, blah, blah, blah. But then you could really lock in an elite asset, in my opinion, like Mahomes, because we know he's not going anywhere. Because like the bottom, there's a world where the bottom drops out of Caleb Williams' value. I don't know if
next year,
or like if it doesn't work with Ben Johnson, like right away, like I don't know if it's over, but man, it would. I think his value would take a pretty decent hit. But again, I would be very interested to hear what people have to say about that. All right, I'm going to throw it to you for your next sell, and then we'll put this into hyperdrive because we got some.
Yeah, I'm going to start hyperdrive right here. You're probably going to push back on this one, actually, which I like. But Chuba Hubbard, RB21, player 93, keep trade cut. I think that's a little high. Again, following my philosophy of moving off of running backs. If you're not going to be in a 2 to 3 year window, especially with a guy like Chuba Hubbard, who's never necessarily been like we want to give Chuba Hubbard a ton of touches. They drafted Jonathan Brooks in the 2nd round. Unfortunately, his knee couldn't hold up. So what do they respond by doing? Even with Brooks on the roster, they go out and they sign Rico Dowdle. They draft Trevor Etienne, who I'm not super high on, but other analysts are. So there is more palpable competition than there was last year, particularly with Jonathan Brooks starting on the pup, missing so much time, having to get acclimated. it was a chalk season for the most part. But even when he got active, he started getting on the field. So when they had another option, they started using another option. The lucky thing for Hubbard was that all season they just didn't really have another option. So odds are Hubbard does remain more of a bell cow-esque running back again. But again, what if he's not? So the first year outlook, I don't think is as certain to have a 27-year-old running back who's never truly been a desired bell cow. We went out and got Chuba Hubbard because we wanted him to lead our offense. That's never really happened in the NFL. And now we're sitting at a point where he's RB21, 27 years old. I would be looking to sell that profile, whether I'm trying to tier up or tier down. I do think he has has a pretty good outlook this year, but I think that's it. I don't think he can outlast competition for that much longer.
It's going to be interesting. I am kind of, wish in between on Chuba Hubbard. I could take him or leave him, but I will say number 12 in targets and with Dave Canales is kind of one of those coaches that once he picks a guy, that's his guy, very much in the same vein as Sean McVay, which is a good transition to Kyren Williams, who I think is one of the more obvious sells this year. We want exposure to the Sean McVay running back for all the reasons that I mentioned. McVay picks a guy and he sticks with them. 88.4% snap share is insane. Kyren Williams led all running backs, but he touched the ball 350 times last year. Finishes the RB7 overall, RB10 in fantasy points per game. And while it's true that it is likely that Williams opens up the season as the Rams' primary running back, the Rams did add another runner to their room in the 2025 NFL Draft in Jarquez Hunter. While he's a day 3 pick, it adds to the chances that the Rams might look to split up the opportunities. I know McVay hasn't done that really historically, but it increases the chances that maybe Kyren Williams loses his job because Williams wasn't that efficient last year. He ranked number 37 in true yards per carry, number 47 in yards per touch, number 52 in yards created per touch, number 32 in breakaway runs per player profiler, and according to Sleeper NFL on Twitter, he was second most in fumbles amongst running backs, and that is a big problem. And he also doesn't catch passes, which is a big pet peeve of mine. Ranked number 31 in targets amongst running backs. So he's very dependent on that volume in the rushing game, which he wasn't efficient with those opportunities last year. So, and we have a workload issue. As I mentioned, see the argument I made for fading Saquon Barkley, and Kyren Williams is not the player that Saquon Barkley is. So for all of those reasons and more, I get it. He's still 24 years old. He's still in a fantastic situation, which I think this is more of the situation is propelling the player over the player, propelling making the most out of the situation. I think at RB12, player 57 overall, I am selling Kyren Williams, and I'm not really. That's pretty obvious to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards sell here. I think there's an argument if you want to be bullish about where he can land, in free agency next year. Because I think you're right. The tea leaves are saying that's probably not going to be the Rams next year. But we saw, Josh Jacobs land in a really friendly spot. Aaron Jones for himself, landed in a really friendly spot. We're seeing, these talented draft classes of running backs continue to get suppressed in the draft more than we would like. So there is a good chance that Kyren Williams ends up being a bell cow somewhere else. But I think the big difference between what he's done and what some of those other running backs that have garnered some good contracts and better situations have is he's been more efficient with his touches. Even with those massive workloads. Josh Jacobs had an insanely efficient season for somebody who had the amount of touches he had in what, 2022. Again, we're talking about running backs who are at a specific point in their career, whether it be, age and declining performance or, competition inbound. I think generally I'm always going to lean towards selling and figuring something else out.
Yeah, it was 2022, by the way. It was that season where Josh Jacobs finishes the RB3 in fantasy points per game, 1,600 rushing yards, over 1,600 rushing yards, 4.9 yards per carry. So you were spot on there. Let's talk about your next player. It's a wide receiver. It's DK Metcalf.
Yeah, so with DK, I'm kind of shocked his value has remained as insulated as it has for someone who's going to be closer to 29 when his team maybe gets a quarterback next year that's worth a damn, and has 2 seasons on record in the top 20 receivers in fantasy points per game, which was back in 2021 and 2020. Russell Wilson was his quarterback. His value really shouldn't be above Dak Prescott and Jalen Waddle, just as 2 quick examples that hit my brain as I was putting this together. Many of his usage and efficiency metrics over the past couple of seasons, where his situation was much better than it was now, were concerning. 2023, he was 26th in target share with 23%, 84% snap share, number 26, 97% route participation, number 24, 2.08 yards per route run, number 22. Then in 2024, 21% target share, number 42, 87% snap share, number 19, 94% route participation, number 14, and 1.83 yards per route run, which was number 43. So his on-field participation got better, but his target share and efficiency got worse. Not what we like to see for a wide receiver that's getting past his age curve. I mean, those were the years age 25, age 26, DK Metcalf of all people. He's supposed to be dominating. And he's not. He's really struggling because we saw how much Pickens, somebody also who relies a little bit more on pure speed and explosiveness rather than separation and technique, struggled in the Pittsburgh system. With an even worse quarterback situation, are we going to be betting somebody, over 3 years older than Pickens, maintaining that same dynasty value that Pickens had going into last year? No, we're not going to do that because that's dumb. Metcalf has one of the worst outlooks for a receiver in his range that you could possibly chalk up. His current starting quarterback, by the way, is Mason Rudolph. It's asinine to me.
Yeah, the more I think about Pittsburgh, the more I really wonder, what's the plan here, fellas? I mean, is it Aaron Rodgers? I haven't heard a lick of an update regarding that at all. I mean, if they get to the start of the NFL season, again, I don't think that this is going to happen, but if Mason Rudolph is your starting quarterback in September, and oh, by the way, I'm looking at these skill position players, and outside of DK Metcalf, leaves a lot to be desired. There's Calvin Austin, there's Roman Wilson, who I actually like, but he has yet to prove himself at the NFL level. Robert Woods, Scotty Miller, Andy Isabella, what? Pat Freiermuth at tight end is okay, but I know they drafted Caleb Johnson. Are they just going to run the ball 500 times? What's the plan here going to be? And they're just going to win every game in the AFC North 9-6, or how's this going to work? Because I don't really see the Pittsburgh Steelers putting up that many points, and it doesn't really seem like an offense that I'm going to want many pieces of in redraft and, for this year in Dynasty as I'm preparing for the 2025 season. So I like that call. I will go ahead and throw out my name. And honestly, as I was preparing for this, maybe I'm crazy, because it appears as most people, it appears as though most people on Twitter who are posting things to Twitter are buying this player. I saw so many people oh, you got to buy this guy. You got to buy him. He's so underrated. Well, I got news for you. I'm selling Chris Olave at wide receiver 26, player 79, because with Derek Carr's sudden retirement, I'm surprised, honestly, that Chris Olave's stock hasn't fallen further, because the truth is the Saints, I wrote here, they're a candidate for having the worst quarterback room in the NFL. F that. They have the worst quarterback room in the NFL. Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and Jake Haener. battling it out,
That's a UFL roster.
Battling it out, triple threat style for the starting job, and you know they want Tyler Shuck to win that battle. Just go look at what Tyler Shuck did in college. Oh boy. Like, good luck, son. Like, okay. Yikes. So, and even with Derek Carr, it wasn't as if Olave was killing it. He played in 8 games last year, commanded 44 targets. That's 5.5 targets per game. Good for a whopping 19% target share, which ranked number 50 amongst wide receivers. Finished with fewer than 5 fantasy points 4 times in 8 games. So he was completely worthless, basically, in half the games he played in last year. Olave was also outproduced by his fellow wide receiver teammate, Rashid Shaheed, before Rashid Shaheed went down with an injury. Olave also missed 9 games with a concussion last year, and he's never really lived up to the hype. After 3 seasons, his best finish was in 2023, wide receiver 19 in fantasy points per game, 138 targets, but we're talking about a guy who was a round 2, round 3 redraft pick last year. That's a huge bust. And I'm not sure how Olave is going to succeed in 2025. I suppose if I'm stretching my version of reality, there's a version of the timeline that where Tyler Shuck is good, like 1 in 46,257 versions of reality. But I'm not betting on it. I'm not betting on that. And if somebody wants to give me Jalen Waddle or Luther Burden plus or Ricky Pearsall plus, by the way, all 3 of those players are ranked below Chris Olave on Keep Trade Cut, I'm doing it because I don't really want anything to do with the Saints going forward because I hate their plan from a team building perspective. Like Tyler Shuck in the 2nd round is an abomination in my estimation. It's terrible.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Shaheed might get a 30% target share this year. I'm not even messing with you. Like with how he operates in that offense, like it's gonna be either Shaheed or Kamara, -2 yards, ADOT all the time.
I know it's a small sample size, but he was the better wide receiver last year.
He was, and he might be the better wide receiver. But yeah. So Chris Olave. I'm gonna go quickly here with my second to last player here, Sam LaPorta, tight end 3, player 51. This has more to do with the general value of tight ends in fantasy football, where I think if I could just get Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland plus for Sam LaPorta, I'd be interested in doing that. LaPorta, after a hyper efficient season in his rookie year, tight end 3 goes down to tight end 8 in fantasy points per game. His target share went from about 21% to 17%. I think his value is somewhere in the middle, but I think this is what it comes down to. Here's Keep Trade Cut. I'm going to list all the assets that are listed below Sam LaPorta. You just think about how many you would rather have. 2025 mid-first round pick, Michael Penix Jr., Baker Mayfield, Quinshon Judkins, Kyren Williams, Devonta Smith, Rome Odunze, 2026 middle first, Bryce Young, James Cook, 2027 mid-first, Emeka Egbuka, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Caleb Johnson, 2025 late first, Xavier Worthy, Christian McCaffrey, Tyler Warren, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Jared Goff, RJ Harvey, because I wanted to get RJ Harvey in there. But obviously there would be some packages put together for some of those guys as we got further down the list. But there is a lot of names that I'd rather build around on my dynasty team and figure out tight end with even a Jonnu Smith over the next couple of years. Then go with Sam LaPorta.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Sam LaPorta was I remember I think I made Tyler Knably walk off the show because I said that Sam LaPorta would outscore, who was it? It was another tight end, Michael Mayer. I don't know. I can't remember who it was. But yeah, he finished tight end 3 in 2023 and then tight end 8 last year in fantasy points per game. And we know how random tight end scoring can be. And that's tight end 8 to 10 is replaceable. Jonnu Smith, wasn't Jonnu Smith the tight end 6 or 7? I think Cole Kmet, I'd have to look this up. I think Cole Kmet's been the tight end 8 before in fantasy points per game. Maybe not fantasy points per game, but the tight end 8 overall, maybe. Tight end 9 in fantasy points per game in 2023. The point is, Sam LaPorta, I think you can. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think with the change in offensive coordinator, yeah, I'm gonna throw out our last two players here. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. He just sneaks inside the top 100, so I can say that he's inside the top 100 on keep trade cut. Wide receiver 38. And similarly to Olave, Jerry Jeudy's not in a good situation entering the 2025 season with the quarterbacks. There is some competence with Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett. They did draft Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, which, by the way, the Shedeur Sanders Twitter has been interesting to say the least as well. I could have thrown that up there too with the Justin Fields. Oh, and let's not forget about Deshaun Watson, who's probably going to miss the entire 2025 season, but he's still in this weird quarterback situation as well. And while it is true Jeudy had his best season as a pro, it really wasn't significantly better from a fantasy perspective to his best season, which I think was 2 years ago. He was number 7 in targets amongst wide receivers with 144, number 4 in snap share, 94.4%, number 1 amongst wide receivers in routes run. He ran 700 routes, but this led to just a 22.8% target share, which ranked number 36 amongst wide receivers. And the truth is that Jeudy didn't really click in the offense until the back half of the season, and more specifically, he didn't click with the offense until Jameis Winston started games for the Cleveland Browns. Jerry Jeudy finished as the wide receiver 5 in week 11, 26.2 fantasy points, wide receiver 1 overall in week 13 against the Broncos, 40.5 fantasy points. And now Winston's playing with the Giants. Jeudy averaged 21.1 fantasy points per game with Winston under center. With any other quarterback, Jeudy averaged just 9.3 fantasy points per game. Now, I will say that it's not all bad. Jeudy did rank number 1 amongst wide receivers in total route wins, number 14 in route win rate amongst man coverage. He can get open in man-to-man coverage, but he was just number 64 amongst wide receivers in target separation per player profiler. And I'm not sure that the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks are going to be good enough to get the ball to Jerry Jeudy on a consistent enough basis. If I can get a player like Isaiah Pacheco or Michael Pittman plus, or a quarterback, I think Justin Fields is ranked back-to-back with Jerry Jeudy according to Keep Trade Cut. Or if I can get if I need a quarterback and I can get a Sam Darnold just to plug this year and next year potentially in a Superflex league, that's a done deal for me. So what do you think about Jerry Jeudy? To me, he's one of the more obvious sells.
Yeah, I think it came at a point in time, too, where defenses just really weren't concerned about the Cleveland Browns, and they're playing from behind. And there's so many factors that go into these like late season blips. And I think it's just kind of ridiculous that we've let his value kind of float up to this certain point. And the fact of the matter is they don't have a quarterback. It's gonna be super gross. And even if he gets a high volume target share, it's like, okay, of what? And then what's next after this for his career? So I'm on board.
All right. Last player, Mr. Babich. Who we going out with?
All right. This one might be controversial, but Jordan Love. So main thesis here, I think he is in the middle. He's in this like little value pocket where you can tier up or you can tier down. And I think it would make a lot of sense because, and really my main thought process here, carries per game this season, 1.7. Now, Matt, the knee injury, okay, 2.9 carries per game in 2023. He was 33rd amongst quarterbacks who qualified. So there are 32 that start in a given week. He was outside of the top 30. So there's just not a lot. There's very little rushing upside. Rushing yards per game is at 14.5. There's just very little there. And clearly, Jacob Gibbs is going to come in here and help us out with, some of his stats here. And, to be fair to Caleb Williams, I'm going to say the same thing with the catchable target rate. There's some nuance there. but I think it's more about upside. And what we're hoping for with Jordan Love is incredible efficiency, very high volume passing, and a lot of touchdowns. Now, there are very few quarterbacks that we can actually count on from a dynasty perspective to be doing that. Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, etc. There's not a lot on that list that don't have palpable rushing upside in the top quarterbacks. Don't believe me? Let's review. Jaden Daniels, rusher. Josh Allen, rusher. Lamar Jackson, rusher. Joe Burrow, passer. Jalen Hurts, rusher. Patrick Mahomes, passer. Drake May, rusher. CJ Stroud, passer. Caleb Williams, passer. I think both, Williams has, some rushing upside. Herbert has a little bit of rushing upside, mainly passer. Sorry. Bo Nix is a little bit, equal of both. Then we got Jordan Love, who's pure passer, not going to be as high volume as the other guys. We're betting on efficiency. We're betting on him to outkick his expected fantasy points per game for the third straight season. Things just don't normally happen. So I would rather tier up to a Bo Nix, a Justin Herbert, a CJ Stroud, a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, or tier down to a Brock Purdy, a JJ McCarthy, maybe a Kyler Murray, depending on if I'm really winning and trying to win like this year or next year. Trevor Lawrence, maybe a Michael Penix Jr., depending on how you feel. Bryce Young, and Dak Prescott, if you're trying to win right now. So I think there's so many options, and I don't think we're going to look back in 2 to 3 years and be like, yeah, thank God we bought Jordan Love when he was QB 12.
Yeah. The other post or tweet by Jacob Gibbs was more damning. So this one says on throws of 20 plus air yards without pressure, 54% catchable ball rate, ranked 20th out of 33. On the other one, intermediate passes, he was far worse. He was quarterback 32 out of 39. So either way you slice that, not great. And again, your point is valid with the arbitrariness, if that's even a word, of the catchable pass rate. But it is something to look at. And I think there is some merit to it. And Jacob Gibbs is doing really good work. You should go give him a follow. And by the way, you should follow us at Babbage_Matt10, at Seth_DIEWOLD. You can follow the show on Twitter at FF Dynasty Table. Matt Babbage, any final words of wisdom before we close out the show tonight?
Yeah, the one thing I'll just reiterate is with Jacob Gibbs and his analysis, I'm merely just adding another perspective to the metric. I do, use it when I look at quarterback success. I don't treat it as gospel, nor would I expect Jacob Gibbs would tell you to. So I just want that to be clear, not poo-pooing on his analysis, just offering another perspective.
I've met Jacob Gibbs in person. He's a really, really good dude. I met him at the Kansas City Live Draft, Scott Fish Bowl, nice. Which I'll be there again this year. So if you want to come meet me in the flesh, in my, popular, fame, persona in live, go down. I think it's Taps on Main, July something. I'll get the specific date. Anyway, that was useful information at the end of the show. We always wrap up with a bang. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Many of you have done that already. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Leave a comment. I will get back to those. I've gotten back to every single one. I can't promise that I'll get back to a reply to the comment because YouTube is weird about showing those. So I try to get back to as many of those as I can, but I definitely will get back to the initial comment. Until next time, nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers, right? Nobody cares about these stupid practice videos. Justin Fields is the best dang quarterback out there. I don't care what anybody says. He can sling it on May 21st. He can't do it week 3 of the NFL season, but he sure can do it in May. Maybe he should go play in the Rocks League. I don't know. Maybe he should go over to the USFL. I don't know. It's so stupid. We'll see you later, everybody. Have a great part of your day, whichever part you're in, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.